Hello guys, welcome to the last part of this series on the efficiency of the market. So in part one, we had the opportunity to look at consumer surplus, and in part two, we looked at producer surplus. One of the things we learned was that when we bring consumer surplus and producer surplus together, we obtain the total surplus, which is a measure of how efficient the market is. And so in this section, we would attempt to look at what the total surplus is and how it is used to measure the efficiency of the market. So let's do a quick revision of what we've studied in the previous parts. So we said that consumer surplus is equal to the value to buyers of a good or a service minus the amount they pay for this good. And so consumer surplus measures the benefit buyers receive from participating in the market. We also noted that producer surplus is the amount received by sellers and the cost minus the cost they incur in producing a good or a service. And so producer surplus measures the benefit sellers receive from participating in the market. Total surplus then is the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus. And total surplus measures the total gains from trade in a market. Now let's consider the market's allocation of resources. In a market economy, the allocation of resources is decentralized, determined by the interactions of many self-interested buyers and sellers. Is the market's allocation of resources desirable, or would a different allocation of resources make society better off? To answer this, we use total surplus as a measure of society's well-being. So let's look at how to measure society's well-being using total surplus. Total surplus, as we said earlier on, is the sum of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So mathematically, it is the value to buyers minus the amount paid by buyers plus the amount received by sellers minus the cost to sellers. Now, we would realize that the amount paid by buyers and the amount received by sellers would be the same. And so since one is negative and one is positive, they will cancel out, leaving us with the value to buyers and the cost to sellers. And so, in effect, the formula for finding total surplus is the difference between the value to buyers and the cost to sellers. So an allocation of resources is efficient if it maximizes total surplus. Okay, and I'm going to repeat this. We're going to say that an allocation of resources is efficient only if it maximizes total surplus. And here, efficiency means one, raising or lowering the quantity of a good will not increase total surplus. The goods are being produced by the producers with the lowest cost. The goods are being consumed by buyers who value them most highly. Efficiency also means making the pie as big as possible. In contrast, equity refers to whether the pie is divided fairly. What's fair is subjective and is harder to evaluate. Hence, we will focus on efficiency as the goal, even though policymakers in the real world usually care about equity too. So let's consider how to evaluate the market equilibrium. And here you have your demand and supply curves. And at the market equilibrium, the price is $30. And quantity is measured in thousands. And so quantity at the equilibrium is 15,000. We can see that the consumer surplus is the triangle shaded blue, and the producer surplus is this triangle shaded yellow. So total surplus is a sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus. Now, the question again is the market equilibrium efficient? Now let's look at which buyers get to consume the goods. So every buyer whose willingness to pay is greater than or equal to the $30 price would buy. Every buyer whose willingness to pay is less than $30 will not. So the buyers who value the good most highly are the ones who consume it. Now, which sellers produce the good? We know that every seller whose cost is lesser than or equal to the $30 price will produce the good. And every seller whose cost is greater than $30 will not. Hence, the sellers with the lowest cost produce the good. The next question we will be interested in is, does the equilibrium quantity maximize total surplus? So when we increase the quantity from 15 to 20, we realize from this diagram that the cost of producing the marginal unit is now $35. So there's an increase of $5. Value to consumers of the marginal unit is only $20, as you can see by tracing this green line here. Hence, we can increase total surplus by reducing the quantity, okay? Because at the equilibrium, when quantity was 15, the value of the goods was $30. And now when we increase the quantity from 15 to 20, we can see that the value to consumers has dropped from 30 to 20. This conclusion is true at any quantity greater than 15. Now, let's also look at a situation where quantity is equal to 10. And we can see from the demand and supply curve by tracing the quantity or drawing a line from the quantity of 10 to hit the supply curve, that the cost of producing the marginal unit is $25. The value to consumers of the marginal unit is $40, as you can see here. Hence, we can increase total surplus by increasing quantity. And this conclusion is true at any quantity less than 15. Thus, in summary, the market equilibrium is efficient. The equilibrium quantity maximizes total surplus. The goods are produced by producers with the lowest cost and consumed by buyers who value them most highly. The government cannot improve on the market outcome. And this is the conclusions we'll arrive at in a laissez-faire economy. The government should therefore not interfere with the market. Now, why are non-market allocations usually bad? Or why are non-market allocations usually bad? So suppose the allocation of resources were instead determined by a central planner, i.e. the communist leader of the former Soviet Union. To choose an efficient allocation, the planner would need to know every seller's cost and every buyer's willingness to pay for each of the thousands of goods produced in the economy. This is practically impossible, and so centrally planned economies are never ever efficient. Okay, and so we'd like to borrow a few um, ideas from the father of modern economics, Adam Smith, and the invisible hand, as he wrote in The Wealth of Nations in 1776. So he said that man has almost constant occasion for the help of his brethren, and it is in vain for him to expect it from their benevolence only. He will be more likely to prevail if he can interest their self-love in his favor and show them that it is for their own advantage to do for him what he requires of them. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their self-interest. Then again, he also said that every individual neither intends to promote the public interest, nor knows how much he is promoting it. He intends only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by the invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention. Nor is it always the worse for the society that it was no part of it. By pursuing his own interests, he frequently promotes that of society more effectually than he really intends to promote it. And so, in conclusion, this lecture used welfare economics to demonstrate one of the 10 principles of economics. Said that markets are usually a good way of organizing economic activity. But we assume that markets are perfectly competitive. In the real world, sometimes there are market failures. That is the inability of the market to allocate resources efficiently. So when unregulated markets fail to allocate resources efficiently, we say that the market is experiencing a market failure. And there are many causes. Some are, one, market power. When a single buyer or seller can influence the market price, as in the case of a monopoly. And then when there are externalities, when other people face the side effects of other people's transactions, as in the case of pollution, where a private person who engages in the production of a certain good or service for his private gain ends up polluting the environment for other people. That is a case of an externality. So in conclusion, when markets fail, public policy may remedy the problem and increase efficiency. And welfare economics sheds light on market failures and government policies. Despite the possibility of market failure, the assumptions in this lecture work well in many markets, and the invisible hand remains extremely important.